We think there was a glitch on the tape or in the sound system, but one of those Kyroots should have been, "Thou shalt not be dumber than thy sovereign." And now that I'm making introductory comments, especially you people out of town, other times and other places, from some little correspondence I periodically get from some of you people, motivates me to make the following comment. Anytime that I have apparently made any personal reference to myself, at the very least it was elusive, and normally it's just an outright lie. And perhaps it doesn't come across on tape, but I have always assumed what the rare times I apparently will use me as a basis of making some further comment, I thought that I played it broadly enough that the burlesque behind the idea came across, but if it didn't, let me assure you that if you think I've ever said anything personally about myself, it was all make-believe. I just made it up. So none of you should get concerned or care anything about it, because it didn't mean shit. You missed the point. It was just an example, and I was hard up at the moment. Or else I would not even made up an example that seemed to be inferring me. Now here we go. Let's take another hardball crack at that general area that I was mentioning last time of gaps, lags, and missing pieces. And this time let's try it vis-a-vis that great softball game of HVN, of heredity versus environment. And again, let me point out, I don't keep bringing this up just to show you how dumb the world is, although it's a wonderful prime example of how life has taken all humans and went, "Look into my eyes." But here again, I was going to expand it in such a way that some of your nervous systems should have in the past already, for it should have been as after the fact, or after you're away from me, that some of your own nervous systems should grab the memory of what you think you heard me say, and that your memory of what I said, or me, and parts of your nervous system are in your own brain wrestling, and your own nervous system almost wins, and you just know, well, that's not right. I understand that, so we're going to try it again, because this is another place to try and lasso it, to whip tie it into the, we're going to leave it a law firm, or is it now a three-man softball team of gap, lag, and missing pieces? But here it is. I read the following one time. Now remember what I told you? I said I've read the following sometime. I guess I've watched. So don't take this personally. Don't believe that I actually read it. Don't even believe it exists. Yeah, I believe it exists. I read recently. See, it's dramatic. I read recently, but don't take it personally. Don't anybody write and say, well, shame on you for reading such as that, or feel sorry that I had to read it, or that... It's just all made up. Just remember that, would you? And I appreciate your concern. I read the following. Now this is not repaving roads we've already been down, because I am now going to try and drag in, I'm going to give the opportunity for some of the general nervous system attitude and some of the run-of-the-mill intelligence of people in this day and time, in their reaction to me pointing out that in the battle between heredity and environment, there is no battle, because on that basis there is no such thing as the environment. Not just to prove that I'm right, but that is at the heart of the binary view that life is induced and forced upon humanity. But here is one of the places that it really gets sticky, that the asphalt wants to melt. And I know that every damn one of you at times have stepped there and thought, well, I thought I knew what he meant last time he brought it up. Or I thought I began to see it, but looked at it from this way, it's wrong. So here it is, and I'm going to help you with it, because here's what I read. It said that shyness in children may in fact in part be inborn, genetics in other words. And yet parents had responsibility in that family stresses could increase the child's inclination to shyness. Now this is not brand new, but this is just the latest one I've read. Now you hear it's a great first story of its sort, because it seems to cover everything, that there is now enough accepted contemporary statistical evidence in many areas. Let's just use shyness since I brought up that example. That they now have weighted evidence on both sides of the argument. And so more and more you're seeing of someone saying, well, 2 decades ago we believed that this kind of human behavior was entirely environmental. And yet now, through some of the more recent neurological research and etc., we're beginning to find that they are in fact what seems to be hormonal bases for some of this behavior. So now we're beginning to think it's a little of this and a little of that. That is a little environment. But this example, the one I read, is just primo. That they're now beginning to believe that shyness, I'm not going any further, whatever it is I recall that they were doing, but that shyness, what would seem to be in times past a personality trait, but rather than just being because your father, your mother kept saying, shut up, shut up, shut up, for 22 years and made you shy, that now they're beginning to find what seems to be very likely genetic variables in people tied to shyness. So it could be inborn, was their term, comma, but this does not let parents off the hook. Because parents still have the responsibility, some responsibility, insofar as, even if it's true that the inclination, the propensity to be shyness is inborn, stresses in the family as the kid's growing up can contribute to it, can exacerbate the whole propensity. And so, you've got both, right? Now, what I was trying to get you, I'm trying to take part of the sticky argument that your own nervous system can almost go, well, that's true. That's true. When you get all wound up talking in some way, I go along with you and you drag me and I think, hey, it's true, there is no environment. But what you just said is true. Those people know what they're doing. I mean, we've got to face it, don't we? Listen. See if you can get just a glimpse, even if you call it something else. See if you can get just a glimpse of what's actually going on. You have life in one of its parts. In this instance, the parents. Let's start there. You have life in one of its parts. Having the part demand of itself, or believe that it can demand of itself, the ability either to change, or the belief that it should change, should alter its own genetic drives, destinies, so as to apparently alter the environment for another part of life's body. In this case, children. I didn't make that too complicated, did I? Can you follow that what it's doing? Again, think back as life as it is. Just what parts you can see, and nobody else even correctly analyzes it, but just the parts that you can see, just the parts that you can sensually deal with. Sight being one of them. That in this fullness in which life, human life, is a part. That's what I'm referring to as the body of life. That one of its parts here, that life is demanding of one of these parts, in this case parents, is demanding of one of these parts that they attempt to change, or that they believe that they should/could change. And this change is absolutely the alteration of their own genetic almost, parentheses, unchangeable, but the belief that they can alter their own genetic destiny, in this one instance, so as, see, I'm giving you both sides of it, but then the third side that ties it, to alter their own genetic destinies, drives, determinations, to such a degree that they can apparently alter an environment out here for another part of life's body, in this case, children. You follow it, just for a second. It's not even. Now notice I didn't deny the statement that I originally semi-quoted about shyness may be inborn, and yet parents still have the responsibility, have some responsibility in that family stresses can increase the inclination to be shy. So you got both going. But then my extended interpretation of it, in essence what it is saying, if you could split up reality again into isolated pieces, especially even three-dimensional, if you could isolate that, what you've got in essence is the parents. Let's start there. The comment that I quoted, the comment does not even say anything about the parents changing themselves for their own benefit. So that didn't enter into the sentence. And don't let your own brain throw you here that, well, that's not the subject under consideration. This whole thing, remember, we're speaking, or I am finally, emblematically, that we're not talking about just what the sentence seems to be talking about, it's just one family and one shy kid now. Get beyond that. The comment that life could be partly genetic and partly environmental. What it's saying is, taking one part of life's body, in this instance, elusively speaking at least, the parents, we're not even discussing any possibility of them changing for any of their own reasons. Whether they could, whether they should, that's not even what's going on. A tacit part of it, if you can follow this, is not even saying that it would be possible for them to change on their own. That's not what's going on here. But it's saying they've got responsibility, not apparently to themselves. It doesn't say anything about that the parents may be shy. So if they're going to be responsible for the children, why the hell don't they shape up? They're 40 years old. Aren't you tired of walking around looking like Elmer Fudd and being shy at your age? You know, look after your own self first, and then look after your kid, that kind of thing. They don't say that. It is almost really behind this, around the corner. When I said tacit, I don't mean it's some sort of secret, of course. It's the piece that is not showing. That it is almost an unsaid admission that at least part of life's body, in this case the parents, cannot change themselves. But they can change the environment that they are responsible for so that another part of life's body might be able to change. Now how about, I was trying, night before last time we met, trying to show a little bit that there has to be gaps for things to move. There has to be tolerance in a machine for it to move. There has to be lag times. There have to be gaps physically. There have to be missing pieces. There has to be this difference between apparently what man can think, what man can plan, and then what he can do. Or else things would not move. Can you see any of that at work on a larger scale? Can you get just a glimpse of it with life itself doing that? That is, it's got part of its body believing we can't change. Genes are destiny. That's it. In fact, even if I decide I wanted to change, where did I get the idea I wanted to change? My genes make me do it. What if I do apparently change? And I think, well, I did change. Who made me believe that? My genes. There are parts of life's body that's always mouthed that. Not that they understood it. They've always been around. But there's always been another part of life's body, spotted here and there, that says that's not true. That is a cheap shot. You people will never get anywhere believing that. If you believe that, you would just feel like you're a victim of your fate. You wouldn't try to do anything. We'd never get anywhere. We'd still be back in caves watching TV by a kerosene light. And so you've got part of life's body that believes without any doubt, and of course without any justification, and of course without any understanding, that we can change. All right. Like everything else in life, you've had these two camps, whether they seem to be that glaringly at odds or even that important at any particular time in history. They have been there. They've been there in individuals. It comes out according to what kind of apparent justification you make, what kind of attack has been made on you, all the way from childhood to being a 50-year-old manager in some company, somebody saying, why did you do so-and-so, or why didn't you do so-and-so? And you're continually answering in variations on this theme of, well, my genes made me do it, or my environment made me do it. Or you're saying, I had no choice, I couldn't help it. Or you're saying, well, I guess I could have helped it, and then you got to justify it in some other way. The part that is not seen, the missing piece, I am trying to trick you. I can't bring it out. There's no way I can describe it other than say it's around the corner, point out to you the other side of a block, the difference between trying to compare a two-dimensional world and a three-dimensional world and all of that. The part that is never seen, even the part that is right here before your very eyes, a continuation of time is the backdrop. But even up to that point, people do not see it, and I can't correctly or simply describe it. But can you see that by that statement, and let's take the statement, it's a good one, life made it, it wasn't some hairball city thinker off in the corner. That was a good part of life's body, and this time and place it stated that whole sentence that I kind of quoted, that shyness may be inborn, but parents still have responsibility in that family stresses can increase the inclination to shyness. That the little nipper that you gave birth to, maybe just he was born shy, among other things. He's just shy. And there it is. Just at an early age, you take him around, you have people examine him, shy doctors look at him, they say, ain't no doubt. The kid's got a bunch of shyness in him, and it may come out. He looks shy to me, and he keeps, a few years it doesn't change it. And then they hear this statement, or some child psychologist says, look, we're having some proof. I don't think it's any doubt. We've got statistical evidence, at least, that shyness is not your fault. So don't you people go away and think that you read the wrong book when you were pregnant, Miss So-and-so, or that you listened to James Taylor records that made your kid shy. Don't. Among other things. That life through some child psychologist or Family Circle magazine may be now announcing to those who can hear it, parents, that look, don't hang yourself up by your parts because your child is shy. That does not mean that you traumatized him in some unthinking, uncivilized way. Because we have evidence now that some of this shyness, in some instances, seems to be inborn. And so you got, remember this, all within the life of life, within its body. So you've got a group, a part of life's body, the parents in this case, going, you know, that's a relief. Because my parents brought me up in that kind of Spock and semi-post-Spock generation of believing that all personality quirks were some form of trauma caused by my parents. But now this generation of parents can go, that there are voices of semi-authority saying, no, all of this is not due to something you did. We're beginning to see that some of this, including shyness, if you can believe it, could be inborn. And so the parents go, wow. Because we suffered, we sit around, we cried, and all the stuff that people claim they do. But, says the voice of authority, that is, another part of the life's body, says, so don't hold yourself responsible if there's something you did in the past. All right, clean slate. But now that you know about this does not relieve you of all responsibility, because you still need to make a very loving, comforting, supporting family life, or else stress can take this perhaps inborn inclination for this child to be shy and make it worse. So you have got a part of life's body that you're saying now that up to this point you can't help what happened, but you didn't actually do anything. Good, all right. But now, from here on out, down the line of time, from here on out, you are responsible in that the way you affect the situation, in this case your children, in this case another part of life's body, the way you affect it, you're going to be responsible for it. Now we're going to hold you responsible. Well, you're going to hold yourself responsible because we're telling you. You can't help that the kid was born this way. But we're telling you now, says part of life's body. Another part, it says we're telling you now, if you do not do and operate in such and such way, you are responsible after this point. And that part that hears it goes, and there's no way out, because it makes sense. For one thing, it had a good first story about things not as bad as you thought, because you didn't make your kid this way. Whew, well, thanks a lot. Fuck Freud. I never did believe those stories. Yeah, but wait a minute. You're responsible because these kind of potential inborn inclinations can be exaggerated, can be fed, or in fact can be lessened through your behavior from here on out. Can you just begin to glimpse the munificent beauty and economy of what life is doing within itself that makes every bit of sense in the world, whether you follow it or not? Because if this is getting too expanded, you do it to yourself. That's exactly the way the individual operates. But on this larger level, and plus one reason I brought up this example, it is almost a perfect first story, because without me trying to crawl into a kind of Corinthian or if not Byzantine description of all this, just on the surface it sounds right. I mean, it sounds right and makes what I've said sound wrong. If not wrong, open to grave question, because this explanation sounds even more satisfying intellectually than mine does. Mine just says, you know, there's no environment, forget it. And somebody else's genes is your environment. Your genes is somebody else's apparent environment. But this seems to go around and satisfactorily cover all bases, all two of them, which is a hell of a softball game, you got to admit. But it seems to satisfy both possibilities, all areas involved with this. But notice it's all going on inside of one living being, of one living life. How about a handful of some CONT, some continuations, some wrap-ups, some tag-alongs of some of this with some other things that have come out somewhere between Kyroot and myself over the last several weeks. Now, before that, we're in no great hurry. Before that, let me ask you something. Go back to playing some kind of parabolic politics, governmental, all right, metaphors. Would you prefer to fall into the hands, I'm going to use everyday terminology now, but would you prefer to fall into the hands of those without a heart or those without intelligence? Based upon the reaction here in person, I don't see any particular need to explain much, but for you out of town, other times, other places on tape, when I say those without heart, I'm just using, since that's obviously not my kind of conversation, just what people ordinarily mean. Would you like to fall into the hands, some kind of captors, but fall into the hands of those with no heart, that group, or those over here with no intelligence? The reaction here is so good that I'm almost disinclined to say much of anything else. But since we've got other times and other places, just let your ordinary memory, your Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox kind of based memory, even those of you that's never been outside of Washoe County or Snellville, Georgia, just what you've seen on movies, you fall into the hands of some group. Would you like the group that had no heart? Who are they to be? Obviously, they'd have to be foreign people. Now, whoever you are, they got to be foreign to you to be good villains. Different religion or race or political belief, or different height or something. And they got no heart. I mean, I don't see a need to really give people the blues and describe in any great detail. You've seen as many or more movies than I have about what people with no heart and what could happen to you if you're in their clutches. But then think about, over here, this other group, you got your possibility, and this other group, they got no intelligence. Now think about that. I will have to do some of the thinking for you and point this out. The Louis B. Mayers and the Griffins and whoever else, of course, being just, they were working for life like everybody else, they never made any great distinction in this. If they were sitting here, famous movie directors, writers, and I was trying to discuss this, and they said, well, wait a minute, we've had villains that were dumb. We've had whole groups of people that we portrayed as having no intelligence. But now you think. And if they were smart enough, I'd say, no, you think. Think a minute. Now you certainly show it, because any time they're villainous in the movies, they're going to be less intelligent than the heroes. Foreigners are always less intelligent. You know, if the French are making movies about World War II, you know their intelligence compared to the Italians is not even worth discussing. But if you go back and you see an Italian-made movie back in the 40s, and it shows them coming into Ethiopia saying, hello, Ethiopians, we're your friends here to help you, all the Italians are going, you know, boy, these people dummies. So all foreigners, of course, are dumber than you are, or, you know, to be villains. But think about it more, though. That is not the message that actually comes across. Now, that is not what life intended. It still shows them without heart. Life in general does not make a distinction that I'm making between people who apparently have no heart and those who have no intelligence. But there is a distinction. There is also a connection. There is a connection greater than the mechanical one, the unrecognized one that I'm saying that life now deals with. That is, of not even making a distinction. But the connection is even greater than the unseen one. But back to the distinction as it can be seen. It is a legitimate question for your own use as to whether you would prefer to fall into the hands of those with no heart or those with no intelligence. But I would strongly suggest, rather than playing what would Louis B. Zanuck or whatever his name was have done under these conditions, besides call for a yes man, I'm saying that what you should do is now, of course, take all of that and go is internally. Who do you continue? And this is where it becomes worthwhile. That there is a distinction in each and every person, that you're wired up already. As the psychologists, those great minds I start out quoting, I would suggest to you that there is ample evidence to suggest that all of you have an inborn inclination to fall in here into the hands of either those with no heart or those with no intelligence. Think about it a second. Well, everybody feels this. Everybody feels that yourself is in the hands of somebody. You feel like that yourself is fallen into the clutches of yourself. Or you feel like yourself is fallen into the hands of a self. Or you feel like a self is falling into the hands of the self. Simply the feeling, brought on not by the downfall of man, not by Madison Avenue, but by the nature in the 3D world of the workings of the human nervous system. The feeling that inside of everybody is at least two, count them, two people. Two people in me. Call it anything you want to, which people do. They'll call it anything they want to. I knew a guy that used to, but the two is in the nervous system. It takes that basis. I've been through this in other ways, such as language, but it takes that for you to be conscious just back at that piss-poor city level, just to be as conscious as you are now. It takes that, the feeling. That's just one of the manifestations. It's not the purpose, because there is no the purpose of any of it, other than the purpose that I can't tell you about. Oh, sure, I could tell you, but the feeling that there's two in me, two things. There is already wired up into you, once I've now put the terms on it, the feeling that you are consistently, if not continually, falling into the hands of those, but those within you that either have no heart or have no intelligence. And when I say consistently, what I mean is almost all of you can feel that it's one or the other. Just look, what is your apparent feeling toward you, back at city level? Not taking into account any effect this may have seemed to have had upon you. But before that, how do you feel about yourself? And that is where the basis of whether you have fallen into the hands of those who have no heart or those who have no intelligence. And don't jump as quickly as I point out that ordinary people would, including the great Hollywood moguls and writers, to say, well, even what you're describing as having no intelligence, it still comes out as having no heart. Because real dumb people wouldn't treat you with any decency. They wouldn't have any sympathy. They wouldn't be able to be intellectually magnanimous enough to say, well, you're a different color than me, and you worship other gods, and therefore I'm going to kill you. But if they were more sophisticated and they had some more intelligence, they'd say, well, there's room on this planet for diverse views religiously, and who am I to say that, blah, blah, blah. So they could say, which is part of life's first story, that there is no real operational distinction between what I'm saying of having no heart or having no intelligence, because being dumb enough will make you insensitive. That operationally it would seem as though, well, you've got no heart, you're so dumb. Nice try. And of course there is validity, but of course there is validity to everything. In you, what has been the apparent, or perhaps inborn inclination for you to feel as though that you are in the hands of those in here, wherever they came from, that toward you at least have no heart, or toward you at least seem to have just no intelligence. Which is it? And now back to the opening question, which would you prefer? Of course, then there's even a greater question, which I hate to be dirty enough to bring up, but whichever one it seems to be with you, and if you go, yes, I can see that I feel as though I've fallen into the hands of those with no intelligence. I don't guess, unless you really feel like that you're within the orbit of this at that particular time, I don't guess you should really push that, should you? To think, I'm in the hands of those with no intelligence. Maybe you should have a candy bar and not think about that anymore right then. Maybe just think about a little bit at a time. This is just a thought. I mean, it's up to you, I guess. Or it's up to somebody, I guess. Some of the, whether you knew it or not, loose ends, I was going to try and pull some of these others together over the last few weeks. And two or three of them that I immediately think of when I get to them all, but two or three of the first ones did come out through the mouth of the Kyroots papers. And one of them was, in the last week or so, was the real revolutionist is never fully comfortable with his clothes. and is never, the rest of it is never actually so until nakedness is in fashion or something. But the opening line was what I was going to deal with, the setup of a real revolutionist is never fully comfortable with his clothes. Now, anybody even listened that night? If I recall, I did not feel here in person much of a reaction, which of course is not all that unusual to Kyroots, is it? But you will allow me now, after the fact, to suggest to you that that had almost nothing to do with wearing apparel. I mean, some of you suspected that, didn't you? Even if it still didn't make any sense. Even Kyroot, as hard up as he may be at times with something to do, did not actually write out even a one-liner having to do with fashion. But thusly, that somebody involved with this, somebody perhaps as some statistical evidence might show someday in the future that there might have been an inbred inclination on your part to get attached to this sort of activity, then that sort of person, I might further suggest that one day, some way off in the future, there might be some sort of statistical evidence that might suggest that such people are not ever fully comfortable with their clothes, with whatever the fashion is. But as far as clothes, then could I suggest that we would be talking about with any confining, with any visible, with any limiting fashion. I guess I'm out to even make it simpler, am I not? I thought that would get some of you feel like you're going somewhere, because many of you have already felt this. You felt it in ways of that you have hit a brick wall with your own thinking, or that you're almost on the verge at times. You feel like, when I've been weaving some of these great serpentine tales, that, and I talk about going around the corner, that many times, and some of you can do it physically, but I can see it with some of you at times and feel it like physically, but sometimes I'll start and some of you will even go. that you can almost get around whatever it is I mean by a corner, that you feel like, oh my God, I'm about to take off with him, that I may be going there, and yet it seems like I just can't get there, and you want to go. Turn over the tape. Remember where we were. Back. Really, any just immediate parabolic level you can see from me discussing fashion and the confines and limitations of anything visible. I'm not sure there's any need for me to try and dig any deeper to force you to see any deeper, because this should be that which enough of you have actually felt, that you can feel the confines. It's not through your environment. It's not because you haven't had a chance. It's not because you had insufficient education. Now, if any of you think, well, it's because you're dumb, then we got a different story, but I'm not going into that tonight, if ever. But the feeling that I have acquired these limitations almost as though I have put on clothes, that these came about. The only reason that I cannot think better, the only reason I cannot see in some great metaphysical, supernatural way in the universe, is from having to grow up in that goddamn Lutheran church or the Baptist church. If my parents hadn't driven me crazy insisting I become an atheist, I wouldn't be in this position. That is, I would not be wearing this. And it's not true. It doesn't matter what Kyroot and my version of it now, it doesn't start out saying that some people, or that Muslims, or semi-Orthodox Jews. It doesn't say any group is better or worse off for the limitations of fashion, the buzzwords, the current buzz ideas, the current belief in what is intellectually and emotionally fashionable. That is, what works, what's acceptable, what is reasonable. It doesn't matter what it is. A real revolutionist, if he was living now here in America, if we're talking about one that was living in 1340 in the Balkans, it would be the same story. If he was living in Sparta in 300 BC, I'm saying you would have been the same thing. Anything that you have as a limitation, anything that confines, but notice the same as clothes, other than those good Southern Baptists and others of their ilk, it is not just the feeling any longer that people dress out of modesty, or if that's the bottom line of it, that have clothes is partly for protection. The same way of now using it emblematically, the limitations of what people believe. All forms of intellectual and emotional fashion is a kind of protection. Nobody's fully comfortable with it. The bell curve in the city is no great thing, because in the middle of the bell curve in the city, most people pass for being sane. It's only the few at the edges. But people are not comfortable. Most people don't spend their life looking for a secret teacher or a guru or reading philosophy. But all you got to do is catch him just on a fair afternoon at a shopping mall and say, I'm doing a survey. Are you fully comfortable and satisfied with your philosophical, that is your intellectual beliefs or your religious beliefs about the nature of life and the universe and man? And just people just stand there. If you don't push them, most of them will go, well, no, not really. And you say, well, thank you. And they say, oh, okay, and that's it. But there is a safety in even having on clothes, in this case fashions, the protection that you do not even find fully comfortable if you're just ordinary. That if you can get people, you can say, oh, what's your religion? Somebody say, I'm Catholic. And you can say, well, we've been doing surveys, and you realize that of the Catholics interviewed worldwide, that over 50% of them said they're not satisfied with the direction the church is taking. And the person you're talking to, if you just do it fairly impartially, they'd probably say, or it's likely they'd say, well, you know, I can't disagree with that. I don't like a lot of what's going on. I mean, don't push it and ask them harder, then they probably don't even know what they'll say. Well, there's a lot about my church I don't like. But then if you say something like, or some other buddy walk up and say, yeah, I heard that. I always hated Catholics anyway. And then you get the guy that you was talking to is inclined to go, what he's saying is, in a sense, this is not intellectual, but it's what life is saying is, well, I don't particularly like my clothes. You know, I can't say I'm satisfied. And the person's saying that until somebody else walks up and say, you know, I was thinking the same thing about you, Charlie. And then the person's trying to turn around and say, well, fuck you. You follow? That there is a protection. In essence, what the man is saying, or a person would say is, you know, being a Catholic ain't that big of a deal. But you know, it's better than no deal at all. You know, it's better than walking around nude. Would you actually believe all the stories that your religion tells you about what will happen after you die or how you should live now, that if you don't live this way, the gods will get you? And the person can say, well, not really. A bunch of that I always thought was some kind of holdover from, you know, it's kind of nuts. I don't believe even the Pope knows all that. And you say, well, why the hell do you put up with it? And you think, well, you know, it's better than nothing. You know, what if they are right? Or somebody's got to know something. It's like someone who is attempting to be fashionable. And you say, do you actually like to wear your hair this way? Do you actually like the way you dress nowadays? And a lot of people, except good fiery teenagers like they should, but you get a little past it when the people should be over it. But anyway, you get a little past it and they go, oh, no, not really. And then your question is, well, why the hell do you do it? And their answer is, well, it's fashionable. What the hell are you asking for? Like, are you nuts? It's like asking somebody, well, why do you continue to be a Catholic if you don't really believe all that? And then their attitude begins to be like, well, are you nuts asking me that? You got to be something? What the hell? And then they'd want to ask you, well, what are you? You know? All of that, remember, is going on inside one living organism. It is it dealing with itself. It is it moving. Anything, I'm going to leave it at this, that anything in any manner, you can look at it intellectually, you can look at it physically, which is of least consequence and probably the most salient aspects to ever get your hands on, so to speak, or emotionally. Anything that you can see that is confining, anything that you see that is limiting, it is always a form of protection, and it'll always be to some degree fashionable somewhere. All of you should be able to see that it is what I just described. It is a limitation. And if you are to this correctly born and entangled, the day will come that you won't like any of it. The day will come that you understand that the Kyroot wasn't about clothes, it wasn't about absolutely going naked, unless you had your own island, unless you were your own island. And then parts of you don't need to be hanging out in the sun, so to speak. But there are no such things as comfortable revolutionary clothes. There can't be, because they're protection and they're confining. If you get them too big, then they're no longer protected. Anyway, there is no way out. No matter what they are, they can be your size. You can believe they're tailor-made. But to a revolutionist, there is no such thing as comfortable clothes. And there is no such thing as comfortable protection. It's a form of slow rot. And everybody else thinks it's protection. Well, if you actually felt way about your religion, why do you continue to do it? Well, what else am I going to do? That's no answer, not to a revolutionist. He wouldn't even need the question. Well, there was another one that several people seem to have enjoyed in various ways. Kyroots said, don't count your chickens. And several people, handfuls of people, here and even out of town, that saw that tape, has written me little notes. A couple of them were not much more than, don't count your chickens, and then all over the page was unwritten, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, hoo ha ha. I just had to write and say, ha ha. Let me say something else about that. Don't count your chickens. Getting down to the real good, pragmatic, behavioral level. Now you should certainly go out and scatter out the chicken feed. But that's it. You got to feed the chickens. Sometimes you got to water them. Sometimes you got to exercise them. Sometimes you got to correct them. But don't count them. Whatever you're doing in life, do not have charts, scoreboards, or if you're going to lose weight, don't ever have a scale. I have many times talked about this general area, but how about real specifically? I am serious. I was not being funny. If any of you ever wanted to lose weight, since it seems to be a fairly popular, if not innocuous pastime, do not have a scale. If you got one, throw it away. Give it to somebody. If you're trying to do anything, a revolutionist would not put up some kind of chart. He would not put up a scoreboard about what I did today. But I should have covered it for you, if you can hear me at all, by the scale. I'm talking about never, and I don't mean just at home. If you're going to lose weight, don't ever weigh yourself. Anywhere. Don't guess. If you got to go to a doctor, if you got your leg partly cut off and you want it sewn back up, and they insist, as they seem to want to do, to weigh you and measure you, of course, after finding out whether you got insurance, that before they'll even touch your leg, they want to weigh you, and that's... If they do, close your eyes. If a nurse starts to say, oh my goodness, you don't like you weigh, cover up your ears. Other than that little, what do you call that? Apparently humor. Other than that, back to you seriously, individually. I mean this literally. And of course then try and take it into the great world of metonymies, metaphors, parables, and so on. If you literally were going to lose weight, if you decided, I am going to do it for whatever reason, do not ever weigh yourself. Never. That's not counting your chickens. Only people in the city will count their chickens. And counting your chickens is one of the things that keeps people from becoming revolutionary poultrymen and women. Keeping charts, keeping scoreboards on what you're doing in life will keep you from, in a more complex and full manner, from doing whatever it is you think you're going to do. This is connected, if any of you can see it right quick, between that great soft spot, that great blind spot, that great sweet spot that I pointed out. And it's so subtle. But here it is. You will end up devoting good parts of your energy to the talking about, to the planning, to the thinking about, to the agreement to something, rather than to the deed itself. I'm just about to make up one, but I'm sure it's true. I'm being silly. I'm not sure it's true. I know it's true. And I got no experience in this, but I know it's true. That there are people that decide to lose weight, and I know this without a fact, now I'm about to say it, that will have a scale, and they'll look at it and think, well, if I'm a, this thing's about 10 years old, and they make them now that are digital readout, or they make them now that match my new bathroom decor, and so part of now of losing weight is what? Well, who can we give this to? Would somebody like it? Plus, should I get, where did I see that digital? Was it at Kmart or Macy's? And so then they'll spend, what? A half an hour, 2 or 3 days? That doesn't matter, but now part of it is to go get a scale. And then what'll I do? I'll put up a thing. Fred, would you help me draw this out? And you're going to draw out and make up a chart? Will you remind me to be sure and do it every morning? This is not silly. It's not an attack. It's not ironic. It's not cynical. That is the nature of life. And it is meaningful what I'm telling you. It's not just funny. It's not just to elicit a smile. Or it's not to make any of you here or in other places go, my, aren't us ordinary people dumb? You're missing it. Yeah, you are dumb. If you're trying to do something extraordinary, you're dumb. You're always dumb to do what you keep doing. And you're always dumb to mistake, as life makes people do, wants you to do in general, to mistake agreement to something. Honey, I thought you said you were going to lose weight. You know what the doctor said. You're right, I'm going to do it. Agree to do it. Not only that, I'm going to get a new scale. I'm proud of you, hon. Not only that, but see if Junior's got some fresh notebook paper. No, wait a minute. Get me something nicer than that. I'll rule it out myself. Where's your ruler? Let's sit down. Clean off the table. And they're going to make up this chart, and they're going to put it day by day and run it this way. And what month is this? Wait a minute. A month's not going to do me as much weight as I got to lose. So I'll do it for this month, and now wait, I'll do one for November. So you spend another night doing that. It's not just funny. It's not sarcastic. But do you see, do you get any feel you've done it all your life? In little ways that are not this obvious by any means. You have taken the agreement to as being in part, and sometimes in toto, the deed done. A real revolutionist don't keep charts. If a real revolutionist, I'm back to what maybe some of you see a little more clearly, or at least see it's not as silly as it was and insane as it was when I started describing it. That if a revolutionist was going to lose weight, he would not have a scale. He or she, and would never weigh themselves. What in the hell has that got to do with it? Now surely, is anybody going to be dumb enough to say, well, so I'll know how much weight I lost? Even I get frightened at times. See, now I told you at the beginning of this tape, don't be concerned with me out there, you people riding by on horseback. I just said that when I said I get frightened at times over how stupid people are. I don't get frightened. I didn't mean that. I was playing a part, just made up part. Had nothing to do with me. So don't worry about me. But as I said, sometimes even I get frightened that intelligent people would say, wait a minute, part of losing weight is you got to have a scale to know whether you're succeeding or not. Think about it. How about, you remember some months back I pointed out that in the city it seems impossible that people can do work alone? Well, perhaps if somebody was having a financial crunch and couldn't afford an expensive bathroom scale. So here's what you could do. You could start asking people, a neighbor, somebody in your carpool, a guy at a newsstand that you pass every morning, you open your clothes and say, am I losing weight? How would that be? That wouldn't cost you anything. But do you see? For somebody to say, well, how can you lose weight? How do I know what I'm doing if I do not have a scale? Now, a whole lot of you here laughed when I went through all this thing about, my God, sometimes it scares me. But think about it. It's you. A person says, well, I'm going to lose weight. And they think, yes, but how will I know if I don't have a good scale? Probably not just a scale, but an accurate scale. How will I know if I'm losing weight? Of course, past these dramatics, I won't be dirty enough to say, well, that is, if you'll pardon me saying so, that's about as stupid, not dumb, I wasn't going to use stupid, dumb, which I mean, of course, synonymous with not as intelligent as one might potentially be, is all that means. But there's only one small step from there to this other great place of people wondering, am I getting any smarter? And they can't do it alone. Nobody can seem to work alone anymore. You got to have somebody else. There's got to be some way, because of the human nervous system, but never mind that. There's some way that I've got to be able to tell, am I getting smarter? Am I doing better? How will I know? If it weren't for fill in the blank. If I don't have a bathroom scale, how will I know I'm getting any smarter? If they're not you people upon whom I can apparently look down, how will I know I'm improving? How will I know I'm succeeding unless there's somebody around that seems to be standing still? People I know who are doing less good than I am. In fact, if they're doing worse, then I might appear to be doing better, and it's just a trick based upon the second law of, well, never mind. I repeat, a real revolutionist does not count chickens. You'll kill the chickens. You'll lose the chickens. You'll just believe you'll have a sign out in your yard, chicken man, chicken woman, poultry business done here. And people come by and say, well, I'd like to see some chickens. I love chickens. And you point to the sign, chicken farm here. And you say, yep. And they say, well, can I see them? You, well, no, I don't have any. Well, yeah, but you got the sign. Yeah. You got a cigarette? I quit smoking. Well, you're not a chicken man then. What does that sign say? You think I'm going to lie? You think signs lie? That's a professionally painted sign. It says chicken farm here. I thought you were going to lose weight. I am. I got a new scale. And I'm keeping a chart. I'm keeping a chart. But are you losing weight? Well, what the hell you think I went out and spent $29.95 for a digital scale for? Are you nuts? You think I'd do that? But have you lost any weight? Look at the chart. Look at the chart. I've been doing this now for 3 weeks. Every day I weigh. But are you losing weight? Well, I don't know. Look at the chart. Another one. This too is surprising. I don't know what's surprising. You find it interesting. I was about to say about this one. This was only, I believe, the last time we met. As this one was read, and I was here in the room in person, and I was not completely in a trance or asleep. And this one from Kyroots got almost no reaction, if any. Do you find it interesting that that's the ones I keep, or tonight I seem inclined to bring up? Anyway, it was the one that Kyroots said, words to this effect, that anything that can apparently be a hobby, through its opposite, can also be a hobby. And the example Kyroots used was, if, as it appears, that shopping can be a hobby, then not shopping could be a hobby. And that was it. And it was just, well, it wasn't that. I was sitting in the back of the room and I saw everybody's head was up as much as your heads are always up and looking and like, no heavy breathing, no laughs, no guffaws, no sudden, just, but having the great, almost unconditional faith in Kyroots that I have, I suggest to you most strongly that there was a purpose behind that. Let me change it a little bit and see if this helps. How about if having stuff is a hobby, which it is, you could look at it, if you wanted to, as being some kind of genetic holdover to hunting and gathering of foodstuffs, if you wanted to, or you don't have to, it doesn't matter. I know I don't care. But that having stuff is a hobby. Forget shopping. Having stuff is a hobby. But if that's so, then not having stuff is equally a hobby. Now you might also not incorrectly infer for Kyroots bringing up such as not shopping, and now me saying that not having stuff could be a hobby. Since that's not considered a hobby, then you might infer that I might be giving some weight, some additional weight, to the not having stuff. But at least give it some weight, because nobody ever looks at it that way. And it is not insane. Oh, sure, by city standards it is. But not having stuff is a legitimate hobby. Now, all the way from the very things that you're very crass, materialistic area of your nervous system and your thinking might conclude that yes, not having stuff. Or as I have even more specifically pointed out, there has been built into many people, without me trying to encourage it at all, but the feeling that passes through many people, especially get involved with this, that many times they look around and the stuff they got, something strikes them that I almost wish I was nude. I almost wish I didn't own anything. And I'm not talking about the kinds that are tied up with the religious entanglements that God doesn't want me to have stuff, or if I was really a good little boy or girl, I wouldn't want this. That doesn't count. That got nothing to do with this. That's got nothing to do with us. But there is an additional level that people do feel that's almost like, I got nothing against chickens, but as long as I got them, I can't seem to quit counting the mothers. I almost wish, I don't wish them any harm, all my books, my tools, the 17 cars I got in the yard that won't run. I don't wish them any harm, but I almost wish I could turn around and say, all right, I'm giving all you people your freedom. And I could open the door and all my books would fly away, all of my hobbies, all my little model airplanes, all my cars would get up and get one final, at least little burst of life back in them and crank themselves up. You know, they'd all wave by and they'd go. And I'd say, Godspeed to you. And that there I'd be nude. And that anything I had to have, I'd have to get up, put on my loincloth, walk down to 7-Eleven and buy it one thing at a time. And walk in, could I please have can I buy 4 pieces of toilet paper? and one paper towel, just one, and one Coke to go. Not having stuff is a legitimate hobby out in the bushes. But beyond that quite materialistic level, as I said, I was also going to point out, at least with no surprise to me, that this also is a legitimate hobby to take it outside the apparent materialistic realm and say not having stuff is a legitimate hobby, and let the stuff be such things as problems, complaints, fears, improbable dreams, Notice I didn't say impossible dreams anymore. I'll leave that to Richard Kiley. Improbable dreams and accounts receivable. Wouldn't that be, if I may suggest, a splendid mirage of things not to have? Everybody else got them as hobbies. You got them as a hobby back at city level. But how about not having? Not only all of those rinky-dink, chop-liver books that you never read, or the cars that you keep collecting, whatever your particular hobby is. I don't know why I always ease off on women. Those closets full and those basement full of clothes you never wear. Now there. Now I feel better, don't you? Just because they don't collect tools and they're always making men. It's about time I stood up and identified this problem correctly. But think about that the things that people really have that are hobbies. And I about covered it, did I not? That you could have as a legitimate hobby of not having complaints, problems, fears, improbable dreams, and accounts receivable. If you could strip yourself, and don't look at it as being some kind of metaphysical challenge that you may work yourself up to it. Just look at it. If having those are a hobby, which notice, if ordinary people did not have those, what would they be doing? They'd be driving the rest of us crazy. They'd be out in the streets like cats, meowing and making noises. And nobody'd know what to do if they didn't have that. So if that is a legitimate hobby of having such things, having stuff, then why is it not a legitimate hobby not to have stuff, including that kind of stuff? And of course the answer to that is, well, you know what the answer to that is. I don't have to tell you everything. Give me a 5-minute epilogue before the tape runs out. Well, we're getting toward the end. We won't even look at this as being legitimate, for me even attempting any sort of legitimate segue. Other things that hang around in my brain that I never get around to. So here they go. Only old time. Potpourri. Is he about to get back in power in Thailand? Or? Here it is. In protecting oneself, one's loves, and in legitimate cases, one's possessions, but in protecting oneself, and include all that, to err on the side of being conservative is no error at all. I say that things keep popping up. And I've tried to talk to many of you people individually. I've hinted. I've tried to talk parabolically. I've tried to talk directly. And I've had very limited success along the way. But if you're ever going to apparently learn from life, then you ask yourself this, if it's even possible. But if you're going to learn from life in your particular case, is it going to be that you're not going to learn from life until you, in fact, as Kyroots pointed out in another context, until whatever it is that you're loving and protecting and possessing that you're not actually going to protect it and know it until you drop it at least once and perhaps break it, kill it, harm it, lose it. People will continue to play out the same, in specific instances is what always brings it to my mind, instances of playing around with your own health. physically, mentally, playing around with the health of your family, their welfare, even your dogs, cats, children. Then into areas that, whether you consider them legitimate or not, I leave you into areas of wrecking your cars over and over, at least banging them up enough. There's ding-dong time every 10 minutes on your car. I don't know, I seem to be followed around by the bad luck fairy. There is a way in which you should be protecting yourself, and I'm not going to, even apparently, if I can help it, preach any sort of sermon. But I'm telling you that in protecting yourself, which is legitimate, you're not a revolutionist if you're not. As uneventful as death may be, other than that frightening example that Kyroots pointed out of maybe having to meet dead famous people, other than that there is, from another view, it's not the view and it's not the only view, but from another view, anybody that is still alive and revolutionist should be fighting to stay alive, right up to the last minute. Not just willfully, but you should be now pursuing a part of the genetic makeup of life itself, so that you are continually attempting to protect yourself, and by yourself. Everything by your own classification, by that which your own nervous system determines, not answerable to me or anybody, but those that you love. Everything from family, to pets, to plants, to that which you apparently just possess, which you may love, of cars, clothes, your house. Include that all in oneself, and I'll leave it to you. You're not answerable. But to protect that which is you to oneself is legitimate. And to apparently err on the side of being conservative in the way in which you attempt to protect yourself, to err in that way is not to err at all. I could make it sound, I guess, a little less, even potentially archaic, but I must leave it at that. You can't overdo. Even when it appears to be that I am being too concerned, I'm being too conservative in the way in which I protect me and mine. To ever believe that, you have erred right there, because it is not an error to be too conservative in protecting oneself. And this may sound fairly sane and reasonable to you, but in the city it's not. That's not the way people operate. They say they do, but then if I got to go back and replay night before last, the difference between what people say, what life makes people say, if people actually were protecting themselves, then we could stand here as fast as you and I could talk. We just start raising everybody's hands about, well, how do you explain that people do so and so? And you can't. People do not do it. That is not one of the legitimate hardwired concerns of people in the city, to conservatively look after themselves, to protect themselves and that which they love and that which they possess, if that is legitimate to them. They do not do it. You don't do it. And then you whine, you complain, or you sit around and you worry in private. You suffer. How did this happen? And from a more complex view, I could find your life and say, well, you dumb motherfucker, I can tell you exactly how it happened. You've done the same thing before, have you not? You even told me you did it. I've seen you do it. If now that's true, didn't you do that? Didn't you put yourself in that same position? Didn't you find yourself in the same position and you stared? And the truth is, yeah, whether you ever see it or not, that if you had that kind of even 4D time consciousness, you would say, in reality, what other people in life say after the fact, which is meaningless, to say, well, yeah, well, it killed my dog and my mother, and my house burnt down, and it's horrible. I'm going to feel bad about this all weekend. But at least, you can believe this, I learned my lesson. Are you crazy? What kind of lesson did you learn? A revolutionist learns a lesson before the lesson gets there. It is not a surprise. As everybody in the city goes, well, who could have expected this? If that's the final word on the subject, folks, God, I'm even crazier than I ever imagined. What have I done to you? That if that's the extent of it, well, who could have expected this? Who would have ever seen this coming? Who indeed? If you don't think there's an answer hidden in there, and if you don't think the answer is real close, not in Tibet, not even inside my jacket, that the answer is even closer than all that, then boy, have I taken you for a ride. No, boy, have you taken me for a ride, what I meant to say. You cannot live and learn after the fact. That was one I was going to let Kyroots do a long time ago, and it sort of got in the rejection box. Maybe on some great holiday I'll bring out, or let Kyroots bring out some of the ones that I never saw fit for whatever reason. But one of them was that everybody loves Grandma after the fire. Is that too weird? It was everybody's favorite sofa that burned up. God, I love that chair, that sofa. Live and learn, yeah. How many grandmothers do you have? Well, yeah, but still. How much time? 2 minutes. No, 2 minutes plus 5 minutes. That makes... So, all right. Well, I guess some of the other ones I was going to wrap up, they keep hanging around. I'll have to hang around for a little bit longer, won't they? Epilogue. Are we just the effing and the logging? All right. Maybe some of you will find this good news. I think those of you that are those of you, you should begin to have some real understanding of the fact that rules, by and large, are not going to do. And one of them that do with it whatever you want to. About drinking. You cannot continually drink. You cannot drink on some kind of daily or semi-daily schedule. But you people actually in this far enough now. I still wouldn't waste my time if this began to have some adverse effect on you. But any of you who want to, like once a week, not on some meeting night and you got no business doing it, I don't guess I should give you too much breathing room. Over once a week. Once a week is it. But any of you who want to, like if you're out at a party, you're going out to dinner and you want a glass of wine or to drink, and you don't have to be some party with us. You know, I got no complaint with that. Well, you people now involved with this far enough. So, that's the new rule. You can drink once a week. I still suggest that you don't get shit-faced. Well, that's just my personal suggestion. But no more than that, or I'm not going to waste time. Just don't do it. You should know that by now. I shouldn't have to even say anything else. But anybody wants to is not moral, not drinking. It's not going to get you into heaven or even outside Detroit. But if you're not big boys and girls, that is, if you're not a little boy, a little less dumb than you were when I met you, then to hell with you anyway. You might as well be a drunk. Because remember, they point out that every ounce of alcohol kills permanently the irreplaceable, the unrejuvenatable brain cells. And as Kyroots pointed out, that that sounds like a real loss in life, doesn't it? Talk about ordinary people that they have killed permanently some of their brain cells every time they take a drink. Is you might as well say, well, they have taken the unemployed, took them out and shot them.